There. So, how would I introduce myself? Yeah. Let me breathe a few seconds. There. Thank you very much for attending the very first panel for this year's CitrusCon 2025. My name is Mikki. So I live in an Asian country. So right now it's currently 4 a.m. Yeah, so it's 12 hours. We're 12 hours ahead of con time. So I mentioned a while ago that I will be sleeping right after this panel because I really need. Oh, hi Vanilla. Nice meeting you. Feel you represent, yeah. There. So this is the third time I've been paneling in an online convention. I think the first one was in FujiCon, and then the second one would be, I think, the second CitrusCon, and then this will be the third one. Yeah. So for today, pretty much how I design my panel is for anyone who doesn't really have an idea about motorsport at all, because I don't really consider myself an expert in the sport. Like, I don't really drive a race car or anything like that. And actually, my introduction to motorsport has been very much really unusual. So I'm gonna be talking about that in the first few slides, how I got into motorsport. I believe some of you here in the chat already know, especially those who are part of the Overtake fandom on AO3, so they already have an idea what I'm going to talk about. There. So let me just switch slides. For today, this panel will be split basically into 5 parts. So I'll just give a quick introduction how I got into motorsport, what motorsports is. So this won't just focus on just Formula One alone, but we will talk about as well all other kinds of motorsport, because I mean, Formula One is really popular, I know, but motorsport is actually a very wide field. There's a lot of categories. Some of them I just really discovered during my research for this panel. No, I'm not Toto Wolff. Yeah. And then I'll also give you like a few ideas, like some things to consider if you want to join the fandom, like all the positives and the not so positives about motorsports. I'm gonna mention that. So just to give you like, to help you make like an informed decision if you want to join this fandom or not, because I tell you, I also wrote it in one of the slides that motorsport is not for the faint of heart. Yeah. And then how to participate in the fandom, like just a few ideas, like where to watch it, how to watch it. Yeah. And then how to participate in fandom. So there will be a bit of an emphasis on real person fiction or RPF. Especially for those who are into motorsport fandom already, so you already know how RPF is so prevalent in our fandom. There. So I'm gonna switch to the next slide. So let me share a brief quote from me. So in motorsport, the fanfics write themselves. If you're wondering who are these two people, so they are not kissing. So these are two Formula One drivers. So this is Gabriel Bertoletto and Nico Hulkenberg. So they are Formula One drivers and they're not kissing. So, but I don't know why they are posed like that. There. So let me switch my slide. There. So how I got into motorsport is wildly different than what you might be expecting. So I wasn't really into motorsport until very recently. Like, I am not the kind that has been into Formula One fandom for like since I was a teen. No, I'm not like that. So I'm not also like the kind that was driving go-karts or into karting or anything. So my exposure into motorsport was via an anime called Overtake. So some of you might already know this because I hosted a watch party for this last year. So just to give you a brief background, so Overtake is an anime featuring the main character's goal to win a race in the F4 Japanese Championship series. So this is pretty much a low-key anime. Like, this aired the same season as MF Ghost, if you've heard of MF Ghost. So not a lot of people have watched it. So we are, the few people who watch it are a very, very passionate fandom. So from there, like after watching Overtake, I got really obsessed. Like I learned as much as I can about motorsports. So I jumped into different fandoms on there. So I started learning about Formula One. I started learning about Japanese motorsports, specifically if you've heard of Super GT or Super Formula. And then from there, I've expanded my interest. So I've learned Formula One drivers. I also learned other sports like I've heard about IndyCar, I've heard about drifting, I've heard about NASCAR. But I still need to learn a lot, so I don't really claim like I'm an expert at it. Like probably I just know a bit more than most of you, but not really like the expert kind that I can talk about aerodynamics or anything. I'm really sorry about it. Yeah, so Overtake is a really good anime. Please watch it. But I'm not going to host a watch party for that this year. So let me just play a quick clip from episode 2. So this is probably my trigger of my motorsports obsession. Let me know if you can hear the audio. Okay, I think we're good. Yes, I'm gonna pause. Pause at that scene. Hi, Vishi Sensei. Yeah, Vishi Sensei guessed it. So thanks very much for attending. Yeah. So this started my obsession with Overtake, and in turn, this started my obsession with motorsport. There. So switching to the next slide. There. So if you're an AO3, so I'm the one of a bunch of people who wrote fanfics for Overtake. So I already have 6 fanfics for Overtake out of, I think there's around 30 fanfics there right now. Yeah, so as soon as I think, I'm not sure, like as soon as episode 2, I started writing fanfics for Overtake. So that's how I got obsessed with it. And I am not the person who's into fanfics. Like if you look into my AO3 profile, I rarely write fanfics. But Overtake really triggered me to write there. Yeah, so I will share my AO3 profile later. So if you wanna read it, yeah. Thank you. So I'm gonna present the next slide here without any context. So these are my current interests. I don't know if you know them. There. So these are the current drivers and the current series that I follow. So Formula One is the default, obviously, but I also follow a few other series. Yeah. So my favorite F1 driver is Yuki Tsunoda. Like I would say right now that Yuki Tsunoda needs justice. Yeah. So I really pity him. Yeah. And then probably the second one would be Isaac Hadjar. So he's a new Formula One driver. And I'm gonna show pics of Isaac Hadjar later. And then Two other drivers here would be Tadasuke Makino and Kakuno Shinota. So I will explain why are there in the slide later when we go to the topic about RPFs. There. So let's go to the more serious part, no? How should we define motorsports? So I'm just gonna borrow the definition from Wikipedia. So Wikipedia defines it as sporting events, competitions, and related activities that primarily involve the use of automobiles. So the definition is actually longer. Like they also include like the flying of planes into the definition. But for this one, we're gonna focus on automobiles. So motorsport has a wide range of disciplines and can be grouped into several main categories. So I'm gonna present that later. And it's pretty much present almost everywhere in the world. So anywhere where people use a car, in theory, there's motorsport there. Especially in my country, like I live in the Philippines, where there's not really a strong motorsports culture. Like we don't host Formula One or anything of that sort. But you can regularly hear or see videos of drag racing or drifting in the city streets. Most of the time it would be illegal. So that's the kind of motorsports that we're into. So we're not really into like formal NASCAR type or Formula One type of motorsport. So motorsport is actually an Olympic sport. So in theory, it can be included in the Olympics. It is governed by two committees called the FIA for cars and FIM for motorcycles. Okay, someone mentioned it, Dave, so let's keep that later. There. Is motorsport actually a sport? So yes, of course. Motorsport is a sport. Like the drivers that participate in it are by and large are athletes, especially the most professional ones. Like if you're gonna check a Formula One driver's Instagram account, sometimes they would post a reel or a photo of them in training, they are in the gym. Like you're not really expected, like if you're a driver you need to have six-pack abs, right? Like if you take a look at pics of Max Verstappen, he's not really like that. But it is expected that if you're gonna be driving professionally, you need to have good posture, you need to have good cardio, because I mean driving at very high speeds is very taxing. It's very usual for drivers to lose multiple kilos or pounds after each race. Yeah, it's called the G-force they're under. It requires intense physical work. And also there's an emphasis on training the neck there. And also, one crucial aspect of motorsport is that in some motorsports, I think in Formula One, like the driver's weight is included in the weighing of the car. So there are some cases, I believe there's a driver who had like, I would say eating problems because he was driving in Formula One, because it's really crucial that they maintain an optimal weight. Like they cannot be too light, they cannot be too heavy as well. There. However, I would admit that motorsport has an image problem, like for example, unlike in volleyball or in basketball or in golf or any other kind of sport where you see someone's face, right? It's pretty difficult to convince a newbie to be into motorsport because they don't see someone that's driving, right? Because they're wearing a helmet. Or let's say if they're in a sports car race, they're actually inside a covered car with a roof, so you don't really see who's driving, right? So unless you know the car number, yada yada. So it could be pretty difficult to imagine who's driving and how they are driving unless you're watching like random post race videos uploaded on social media. There. So here's some random photos of motorsport drivers training. So we got here Fernando Alonso. So Alonso is now in his 40s, but he's still active in Formula One. We got here Max Verstappen. I forgot if he won like world driver champion like 3 times already. And then we got here a new driver called Franco Colapinto. So he's from Argentina and he has a very big fan base. So if you are South American, You might have heard of Franco Colapinto already. Yeah. And then we got here from MotoGP. I think he's Mark Marquez. Yeah, I would talk about Colapinto more a bit later during the third part. Yeah. So let's talk about how I categorize the different kinds of motorsports. So I categorize it into 5 main categories. Like this is not like a scientific definition. This is how I perceive them to be. Like if I'm gonna explain it to a layman, this is how I'm gonna summarize the categories of motorsport. So the first one would be what I call single-seater racing. So if you've seen videos or watch a live stream of Formula One, for example, I mean the cars don't look like cars, right? So the running joke is that they are flying coffins. So in single-seater racing, the participants race using bare bones cars. So they keep it as basic as possible. Like the only important part would probably be that the driver's seat, the steering wheel, the tires, and the chassis, and the engine, and so on and so forth. So they do not look like cars at all. Most of the time, single-seater races happen in purpose-built circuits. So there are places that are dedicated to just motorsport alone, the same way that there are basketball courts or volleyball courts or soccer or football arenas. There are also dedicated places for motorsport events. If you want to start a career in single-seater racing, it's the advice is that you need to start young. It is not unusual, for example, for kids to start at karting events like during their elementary school years, and then later on they move into the higher categories of what we call formula racing until they get considered to drive in Formula One. Formula One, I would argue, is probably the most popular motorsport event in the world. So there are only 20 drivers and 10 teams in for both, but next year it would be 22 drivers and 11 teams. They race in various circuits around the world. So they do just race in one place. So they race in the US, they race in multiple cities in Europe, in Asia as well, and so on. So it's pretty much a worldwide affair. So there are other kinds of single-seater races though, aside from Formula One. So I don't know if you have heard about these events like Formula E, Super Formula, IndyCar, Kyoto Cup, the Karting World Championship, and then the inspiration for Overtake, which is F4 Japanese Championship. So there's actually a lot of single-seater races aside from Formula One, such that if you're not the lucky person who got a slot as a driver in Formula One, you can still drive at another event and still be considered a successful race car driver. Yeah, there's a lot. There's actually like national level championships as well, like in Japan, in Italy, in UAE, in India. There's actually a lot of single-seater races that held on the national level. So Formula One is pretty much the pinnacle of the sport, but single-seater races can happen pretty much everywhere. Yeah, they went through all these levels before they got here. There. And then the next category would be what I call real car racing. So on the right, you see like a pretty typical car. It looks like the car that you might be driving, but here it has been thick with sponsors and an illustration of Hatsune Miku. So this is Good Smile Racing Team Okyo. So they are known for driving race cars sponsored by Hatsune Miku. There. So unlike the single-seater races, no, in real car racing, the cars they're driving pretty much look like typical cars. So sometimes they call it stock cars, like they just get a consumer vehicle and then modify it a bit so that it can be pretty much used for racing. Yes, they race multiple times a year actually. This Hatsune Miku. So this is not just a toy. This is an actual thing. So they also run in the same circuits or the same streets that single-seater races use. So it is not unusual for single-seater drivers, like if you're a Formula One, I mean a Super Formula driver, for example, you might be driving in Super GT as well. So pretty much the schedule might be jam-packed for some drivers because they might be participating in 2 or more campaigns as well. There. So it's arguably more accessible than, let's say, Formula One or a single-seater race because you don't need to design a car from scratch. You just need to modify a sports car. For example, like put a more powerful engine, modify the chassis or anything, and then you can participate in a race. There are two types of events. One is the lap event. Like, for example, you need to drive 100 laps. So the first to complete the 100 laps win. And then we have what we call endurance events. So I believe there's this event called 24 Hours of Le Mans, where a team needs to drive a car continuously for 24 hours. So I mean, there's short breaks, like they also need to switch drivers like during that 24 hours. But I mean, the challenge is that the car should not break down or burn or anything during that 24 hours. So the team who will complete the most laps during the 24 hours will win. Yeah. So here's some example of car races. So the first one is the World Endurance Championship. So the event I mentioned, the 24 Hours of Le Mans, is part of that. The second one is Super GT, which is based in Japan. So if you look at the cars are pretty important, like pretty typical, no? They just attach a sort of wing at the back. So they use sports cars from Toyota, from Honda, from Nissan, and then they just modify it for car racing. And then we got here the NASCAR. So this is much closer to consumer vehicles. No? So this is what they call stock racing. So the Americans here on the chat should already know this by now. And then the last one, so I found this as random, no? So this is the British Truck Racing Championship. So even trucks can be used for racing. So it's pretty cute. Yeah. The trucks are holding there. And then the next slide would be motorcycle racing, no? So instead of cars, obviously they drive motorcycles. It's more, I mean, it's less complex than car racing because the motorcycles don't take that much space. But there's emphasis more on the racing suit of the driver, no? So unlike the racing suits of car drivers where it needs to be fire resistant, for motorcycle drivers, especially for MotoGP, I just read that they usually use leather because what they need to protect themselves from is more for abrasion, dust, concrete, and so on. There. So MotoGP is the most popular motorcycle race in the world. There. And then the next one would be off-road racing and rallies. So the first three ones I've mentioned, they happen in more formal environments. But off-road racing and rallies happen pretty much off the road, literally. It might start, let's say, for example, at a gas station, might be like the starting point, but from there they need to drive away from formal roads. So some events can be extreme, like they need to drive in deserts, in forests, in snow, etc. So there are rallies that happen, I think, in Kenya Safari, for example, or there's an event called Dakar Rally that happens in Saudi Arabia. So the drivers race around the desert. One key difference in off-road racing and rallies is that usually it's done by pairs. So the driver will be paired with what they call a navigator that will read the map and provide them instructions. So for those who want to write fanfics, just to give you an idea that usually for rally racing, it's not unusual, for example, for couples to race together, like husband and wife, boyfriends, girlfriends, friends, brothers, sisters, mother, father, etc. Yes. I haven't watched a lot of rallies yet, but I find this really exciting, especially when I found the part that it's usually couples who drive in rallies. I mean, it's a pretty enjoyable bonding activity, I would imagine. Yeah. And then the last one here, this is what I call the quote-unquote driving school events. So I call it as such because instead of focusing on the speed or completing laps, no, they are more of tests of navigation or car control. So there's a lot of examples of driving school events like drifting, drag racing, trials, gymkhana, hill climbing, monster trucks, etc. So this is, I think, this might be the most accessible motorsport ever because it can happen in any empty street. And in, as I mentioned, in my country, sometimes it is held illegally, especially like drifting and drag racing. The people would just find an empty highway and race there. So some examples here, no, some photos. For example, gymkhana. So think of it like the DMV as a sport. So people would be challenged to drive, let's say, drive along obstacles or so on. There's also a motorcycle sport called hill climbing. So they're gonna climb a hill using a motorcycle. And then for those who have watched the anime, so they should be familiar with drifting already. So what is being tested here in drifting? This is more like, how would I explain it? Like, it's not really about speed, but they measure some technical variables here, like the angles, the lines, how you distract the driver behind you, and then there's a set of judges that would give a score who made a better drift there. So moving on, no. So there, I'm gonna present some things to consider why you wanna be and why you might not want to consider motorsport. So motorsport is cool. Like I've seen here in the chat, people are already aware and talking about how motorsport has influenced a lot of technologies that we now use in consumer vehicles. And motorsport involves a lot of data crunching, no? So like if you watch a Formula One race, you would see race engineers and mathematicians and statisticians facing their computers, monitoring the speed, monitoring the data, monitoring the competitors. And motorsport is probably the only sport that is both physical and digital. Like, you don't really expect a motorsport driver to be driving at a circuit every day, right? So most of the time, their training nowadays is using a racing sim. So they drive using virtual tracks. Like for example, Max Verstappen is known to be a very active participant in virtual races in a software called iRacing. So that's where he trains. So in motorsport, I mean, drivers is the star, but the teams make the magic. Like the mechanics, the car designers, the sports trainers, statisticians, and all of the admin in the back end. So it's a full team that makes a driver successful. There. So just want to share now, like for example here, Ayao Komatsu, which is the ultimate boss of a team called Haas in Formula One, has a PhD in vehicle dynamics from Loughborough University in the United Kingdom. So these are really smart people who's running these sports teams. There. So motorsport is in theory fair, no? So unlike, for example, let's say in more popular sports like basketball or volleyball or boxing, like if you lose a round or if you lose a game, you need to say goodbye, like game over. You don't have any chance for the rest of the year. In motorsport, it encourages continuous improvement. Like for Formula One, for example, they have around, I think, 20 to 22 races. There are more than 20 races a year. So if you didn't win the first round, you can always try again the next round. Like you don't really need to cry in the corner and you're gonna be eliminated for the rest of the year. Like, or let's say for example, if you qualified poorly, like if you drove terribly during the qualification round, you just park at the back. It's rare that you get eliminated. So the scoring system in most motorsports, it works like this now. Participants are scored based on their position. So the first to get to the finish line wins. Like for example, Verstappen here gets 25 points, but the 9 people behind him would still get points. So there's still a good chance, let's say for example, for Hamilton to win the next race. So it will be a tighter leaderboard in the next round. So it means that in motorsports, it rewards consistency and not one-off wins. Like in one race, driver A would win, but you wouldn't know if driver B, C, D, or E would win that next round later on. There. So one example here, no, one of my favorite drivers is Leonardo Fornaroli. He didn't win a single Formula 3 round last year, but he became the series champion because in each round that he participates in, he consistently scored points. So he is one of the great examples of how the scoring system in motorsport works. There. And then motorsport is worldwide. Like if you know the car brand Ferrari, you would know that they have very passionate fans, right? They're called the Tifosi, so they are all over the world. So motorsports fans are all over the world. They are almost on every social media network, and motorsports events can happen near you, even on your city streets. Yeah, so there's a lot of opportunity for many people to win in different ways. There. So this probably would be some things to ponder, no, before you join the motorsport fandom. So motorsport is not for the faint of heart. Accidents still happen. It happens a lot in motorsport, but fortunately, fatalities are pretty rare nowadays, unlike the early days of motorsport. There are certain like driver improvements and car improvement that has made that happen. Even if, for example, here this happened 5 years ago, a driver named Romain Grosjean, his car crashed, the car burned, but he still survived. So he's still racing in another motorsports category, but not in Formula One anymore. There. And motorsport is financially unequal, such that if you want to participate in top categories like Formula One, you literally need a lot of money. You need to pay for the car, the equipment, the spare parts, the staff, the travel, etc. So if you're not born rich or have lots of sponsors, chances of moving to higher categories are slim. So there's a lot of sad stories of people having to give up their dream of becoming a Formula One driver because they cannot afford paying for a slot at Formula 2 or Formula 3, for example. There. This is one example, no, like Mercedes is already a big team in Formula 1, but they technically lose money if not for the sponsorship of the parent company of Mercedes. So this is pretty much a really big financial affair. There. And then let's talk about diversity in motorsport, no? So we've been talking about men all the time, but you might be wondering, is there a woman driver in Formula 1? So the answer is no. So right now there's no female driver in Formula 1 itself, but in other motorsport categories, there's a few women drivers already. If we're gonna talk about race as well, no, so only 30% of Formula 1 drivers are people of color. There's still a stereotype that motorsports drivers are mainly from Europe and North America. I mean, Lewis Hamilton is popular, no, he's been popular for quite a while already, but there's still not a lot of Black or Asian or Middle Eastern drivers yet in top motorsports categories. But the good news is that there's been some efforts already to attract diversity in motorsport. So some in the back end, like attracting engineers or mechanics, for example. It's not unusual to have female mechanics in Formula One anymore. There's also some all-women series emerging, such as Formula One Academy and Kyoto Cup. I don't know if you have heard about these events. So these are some examples, no? So I've already talked about Lewis Hamilton. On the upper right, we got here some drivers from the all-female racing series called F1A. On the bottom left, we got here a driver named Lilu Wadu. I'm a fan of this driver. Like, she can really compete head-on with male drivers. Like, I've watched her multiple times during Super GT. I really love how she drives. And I believe like a few weeks ago, she won her first round in the World Endurance Championship. So she's a really great driver. And then here, we got here an Asian driver named Somkiat Chantra. So he drives in MotoGP. So he's a Thai driver there. And then let's talk about as well like the drama and the harassment in motorsports. No, so someone mentioned in the chat like, is Colapinto actually popular? So yes, surprisingly, Colapinto has one of the biggest like I would not say the biggest, but one of the most active fandoms in Formula One that it has led to harassment of other drivers, and Colapinto had to personally tell them to stop. There's also like shows, if you've heard about Drive to Survive in Netflix, so some people don't really like Drive to Survive because they feel like the portrayal of the drivers and the teams in Formula One are not really close to reality. Yeah, so this is one example, no? This is just pretty recently, so Colapinto had to deal with his fans who has been harassing another driver named Yuki Tsunoda. And then lastly, no, so just like any other human activity, motorsport is not eco-friendly. So surprisingly, the cars is not the problem in motorsport, but rather the logistics of driving all over the world. Like they race 20 times a year in different cities. So you need to ship the car, you need to fly people, and also the logistics of people going during the race circuit. So they are not environmentally friendly. But there are initiatives to address this, no, like Formula One right now uses hybrid engines anyway. There's a racing series that use fully electric vehicles, and there's also encouragement for fans to use public transport to reach circuits. No, also emphasis on recycling, carbon offsetting, etc. The typical environmental management. Yeah. So you might be wondering by now, how can I participate in motorsports fandom? Well, I guess the good starting point would be to search where to watch the races in your own country. I live in Southeast Asia, no, so we don't have Formula One TV. So we have what we call Be In Sports, and the last time I checked, the subscription fee for Formula One in Be In Sports is just $2. So it's really cheap. And sometimes you can actually watch motorsports events on your TV. So I'm not sure about your local channel, so you might need to check. And sometimes the events are streamed on YouTube, so you can actually watch an event for free. One example for that is the all-female series Kyojo Cup, no? So you can actually watch the races on YouTube. This is free, and there's also English commentary. So this is really awesome. There. Or if you have time, no, or if you live near a racing circuit, why not just attend an event near you? If you're in Europe, United States, or Japan, there's a high chance that there's already regular motorsports events happening near you, unlike in other countries. But even so, no, most countries have at least one dedicated racing circuit. So you just need to do your research and check if you're able to access it. Obviously, for popular events like Formula One, they're really expensive. But there are certain motorsports events that you can attend for free. Like this is a local example, no? So this happened last month, so the event is completely free. There. So this is one example, no? So this is like the tickets for the upcoming Singapore Grand Prix. So I cannot afford this because this costs pretty much like the monthly minimum wage in my country, which is around $300. So I cannot imagine attending this yet, but I can try saving money there. Or why not just join motorsport communities from the comfort of your own home? These are the resources I personally recommend, no? So I would recommend like our Formula One if you have a Reddit account. So If you have Blue Sky, there's also Blue Sky algorithms there. You just need to search. There's one for Formula One. I think there's several for Japanese motorsports as well. If you want to follow updates for motorsports other than Formula One, I recommend a Discord group called Feeder Series. So I will post the link after the panel. So they have dedicated chat rooms for other motorsports other than Formula One. So if you want to like dive deeper into the sport, if you want to know who are the emerging athletes in the sport, you might want to join this Discord group there. And then we're jumping to the good part, no? So I've been talking like 90% about 90% motorsport and 10% BL already. So let's go back to the BL aspect of it. Like, you might have an idea already that Formula One is popular, no? So, of course, with the sport being popular, so it's no surprise that some fans engage with it the same way they engage in fictional media. In Tumblr, it's a little different, no? Kasi in Tumblr, it might be more of what they call reader insert fics. So for example, Lando Norris X reader. So that's the kind of types that you see on Tumblr. The more traditional fanfics, you can see them more on Archive on our own or AO3. There's also a Reddit community, no, called our fanfiction. So I will show you some posts on our fanfiction. So that Reddit sub is just dedicated to simping and shipping motorsports drivers. So here are some examples. Like you get to see memes like this. Yeah, so people simp Leclerc, people simp Logan Sargent. There you get to see half-naked Isaac Hajar. You get people shipping Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri if you already know them. There, so you get memes about Verstappen, and then you get memes about Colapinto and Carlos Sainz. Yeah, so there's a lot of visions that you can see if you're into Reddit. You will see a lot of these every day. There's a video actually, but I won't play this anymore because we're gonna lack time. No, I'm gonna skip that. That's a compilation of Pierre Gasly and Yuki Tsunoda. By the way, I'm glad to announce that Formula One is now the biggest sports RPF fandom. So there are now more than 50,000 fics on AO3. So I think as early as January, Formula One was still like the second largest or third largest, but now I've checked it a few hours ago. Formula One is now the largest sports RPF on AO3. So it has went past men's football and men's hockey already. Though the distribution is kind of unequal, no? So the vast majority of motorsport fix on AO3 is obviously Formula One because that's the most popular event. And to the surprise of no one, if you check motorsports RPF, the vast majority of them are pairings. There's also like female-male pairings, especially like for the reader inset ones or original character ones. And then there's a few like FF pairings as well. There. And then if you're wondering, these are the top motorsport RPF tags. So I wouldn't really explain them in detail because I would assume that some of you might be active on AO3 already. So the top tag is flop, but the other ones are not surprising as well. We got angst, we got established relationship, the typical stuff. And there's actually some Omegaverse Formula One RPFs and AUs as well. There's a lot of motorsport AUs there. And then here are the top motorsport ships. So we got here Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen. The number 2, Daniel Ricciardo and Max Verstappen. And then to the surprise of no one, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri together with a baby. So this is a funny photo. And then we got here Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz. And then the last one would be Pierre Gasly and Charles Leclerc. So people who are talking about Omegaverse a while ago, You should get by now why are these pairings popular. Like the possibilities are endless, I would say. There. So this is one. I'm showing you a screenshot of the RPF I've written, I believe, a year ago. So this is the only RPF that I've made, and this is for Motorsport. So I have not written RPF for any other fandom, just for Motorsport alone. There. And then just a quick mention of the ethics of RPF, no? You might have heard about the controversy of this book called Overtake My Heart. This is supposedly a fanfic that was monetized and sold on Amazon. So the serial numbers were not filed up. Like, it literally mentions Daniel Ricciardo on the page. So it caused some controversy, like Motorsports RPF is pretty sensitive, like, to this, no? Like, they don't really want the fanfics to be exposed to non-fans because they worry that what if athlete A and B reads the fic? So there's a lot of private Motorsports RPF fics on AO3 that required login for you to access. There. So what happened was that Daniel Ricciardo is actually aware about the fic, like he was showed the fic, he read a few pages of the fic, and this is how he reacted. No, there. So he was actually interviewed. What was his reaction to the RPF that was monetized? He wouldn't believe at first that it happened, but then when he was shown the actual book, he was pretty amused. No, they didn't change the names at all. So it literally shows. If you're gonna check it on Amazon, it shows his literal name, Daniel Ricciardo. I look Jack though. Yeah. I mean the cover sad is AI generated. No? There. And then finally, if you're not really into RPF, why not just check some adjacent media instead? So I'm gonna share a few titles that are more like the theme is motorsports, so they're not necessarily BL, but you might enjoy it in between races. So for example, here Capeta. Capeta talks about karting. I believe in the manga it might reach until the main character enters Formula 1. So I haven't read the manga yet. There. And then the next one would be Initial D. So Initial D is a wildly popular anime and manga series because of the Eurobeat and the drifting. So some of you might be aware of it already. I've only watched Initial D this week and I really love it. I really enjoyed it. I'm gonna watch the rest of the episodes after, like, today. Once I wake up, I'm gonna finish the other episodes. And then I would say the sequel of Initial D, which is MF Ghost. So this aired the same season as Overtake. Yeah. But the topic is a bit different than Initial D. And then here we got Overtake, which is I have already mentioned during the first few minutes of the panel. And there's actually some motorsports anime that feature women. So we got here an anime called Two Car. It's not canon Yuri, but the main characters are a pair here. So the pair here we got here Yuri and Megumi. So they train for a race called sidecar racing. So this is a legit sport. So they attach a sidecar to a motorcycle and then you race. Yeah. And then we got here another one. So this aired last year. So it's called High Speed Etoile. Fun fact, one of the staff of this anime is a legit driver called Ren Sato. He's one of the voice actors as well as a contributor to the illustrations for this anime. Thanks, Araya. We're about to finish the slides. There. And then I'm gonna show you a manga as well, no? I mean, this is not CitrusCon without me sharing a manga. So there's actually a manga that talks about motorsport. Sadly, there's no official English translation. So it it focuses on pretty much like a senpai kohai dynamic. The younger driver meeting the older driver that he's been a fan for a long time, and then they become competitors in a single seater series. There, I'm gonna post links to this later, by the way, don't worry. And then there's also this webcomic, no? I've stumbled it during my research. It's called Ride or Die. This is more on the supernatural aspect. So this is also one title that I need to tick off from my reading list. It's really interesting. Like I've seen a few chapters. It's really awesome. There. And then some of you have already mentioned this, so we're gonna. I wouldn't end this panel without mentioning Pit Babe. So Pit Babe is an experience. There's so many things happening in Pit Babe. I'm not really sure how I would react. Like the quote unquote near supernatural abilities here is actually Omega Burst. So props to Rakuten Vicky for thinking of a euphemism to your Omega Burst. But there's race cars, there's a Megaverse, there's mafia, there's money laundering, there's a lot of stuff happening. Like if you're familiar with Mexican or Filipino or Korean soap opera, so you would know what to expect in Pit Babe. There's a lot of stuff happening there. And then the last one, shout out to the team behind Fake Racing Games. So they have a separate panel later. I think it's around 11. I forgot the exact time slot. So Fake Racing Game is pretty much a game about racing and a game about men, basically. So the plot is pretty much self-explanatory. So shout props to the team for creating this. Yeah, please attend their panel. I would appreciate if you're gonna be jumping to their panel later. There. So that's it. That ends my introduction to motorsports. So I hope you have learned something about it. And if you are not really into the fandom just yet, I hope you become interested enough to start lurking around and find a way to enter the fandom. So if you have any questions or anything you want to comment about the slide, if you just want to talk to fellow fans, please go to the extra credit channels. I already set up the channels. I'll just going to post a copy of the slide and the resources and the names mentioned for this panel, especially for those who had to drop off or have missed the panel. So you will be able to view the slides immediately after the panel ends. And also, by the way, this panel is recorded, by the way, so you will be able to watch it once the con ends. This will be uploaded on YouTube. So there. Thank you very much, everyone. And I'll be opening the floor to any questions you may have. So Raya, I'm not sure if
Yes.
if your
I
mic
see
is
a-
on.
Um,
Yeah.
So Corey asks, are there any competitions based on car modding?
I'm not sure exactly if there's like a dedicated about car modding, because I mean that in theory, especially on the real car races like Super GT, the cars itself are extensively modded already. So that's pretty much the nature of the sport by itself. Like you would see like the car body might look like your typical Toyota or Honda or Nissan vehicle, but deep inside the engines, the all other stuff on the inside, they have been modded already.
So we're gonna do a real Theseus ship, conundrum.
Yeah. If you don't mind some sci-fi in your motorsport, there's future GPX. Though there are some motorsports though where there's restriction on the modding on the car. Like for Formula One, the teams are pretty much left to themselves how they're gonna design the car. Like they just be given certain guidelines and then they just design the car from there, no? But in some other races, there's restrictions to how extensively you can modify your vehicle. Sometimes you cannot really modify your vehicle at all. Like everyone will drive the same vehicle, so all that's being tested is the actual driving skill. And that's prevalent in like the junior categories like Formula 4. So they're gonna be driving the same car, the same model, the same engine. And what they're being tested is that all things are equal. How fast will you be able to drive this thing? There. Any other questions?
Do you have any illustrators who draw motorsport/moto pairings that you like?
Honestly, no. That I still need to work on. I'm more into the fanfic side of things, and I've left Twitter a long time ago, so I don't know a lot of illustrators yet. Probably if anyone can refer me to a good motorsports illustrator, probably I can. I I've seen a few good art from Reddit because I'm more active there no, than Tumblr or Twitter or Blue Sky. Probably I would share that in the extra credit channel later. There's one illustrator on Reddit that draws memes after every Formula One race. I find them really funny. But moto pairings or ships, I don't know. I don't know at the moment. Yeah. So please refer one to me. Yeah, the hashtag F1 art on Tumblr. Thank you, Leia. There. Other questions, guys?
As someone in the fandom, what do you look for in fics?
Probably not really as different as how I fix in other fandoms to read. Like I'm more into the realism kind of guy. I rarely read Omegaverse or AUs, but sometimes I do, but I'm more into the more typical vanilla stuff, yeah. Though I haven't read a lot of reader insets yet. Like it actually amazes me when people write reader incest because I couldn't imagine myself inserting myself into the fic.
I really like your imagination is better than mine.
Yeah. Like I do that. Do I deserve this? Like yeah, that's how I react when I read in reader incest. Like, do I deserve being inserted in this fic?
It's like, sorry, I am not worthy of this.
Yes.
All right, we got 1 minute left. We have time for one more quick question if somebody wants to drop one in.
Yeah.
What is your most recent favorite fanfic?
And it's not Formula One, but for Super Formula. So I mentioned this driver called Rensata a while ago, no? But it's a genfic actually. So it focuses on Ren Sato's non motorsports obsession because he's actually pretty an artist as well. So I really like how the author integrated the personality of Rensato into the fic. I'm gonna link that in the extra credit later.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mikki, for letting us know so much about Motorsports and BL.
Thank you very much for attending. Thank you, Soraya, for your help today.
All right, be sure to check out Extra Credit if you want to talk some more. Bye.